Are you blaming yourself or are you empowering yourself with taking responsibility? The difference is the movement.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast. This is Tom Rutledge. I'm happy to be back here with Patrick, our producer, and Alan. How are you doing, Alan?
Well, I started to get back on the tennis court, Tom.
You need to be on the tennis court. I mean, it's
a lot of fun. I've been enjoying it. I was telling Patrick, so I've been also getting into the gym a little bit more now that my schedule's kind of settled down a little bit. I was doing some back exercises, right? Some pull downs, some lat work. And I pulled something on my back. So I hit yesterday and I had a nice hour drill session and stuff like that. And was moving pretty good. But this morning I woke up, man, and my back is sore. I am sore. So I'm in a little bit of physical discomfort. I'm feeling really good about the work we've been doing. I'm getting some amazing feedback from people about how valuable it is and how it's getting people to really change their whole approach to their recovery.
I love that.
And it's really, people are feeling so enriched by these ideas and stuff that we've been, elaborating on, that we've been expanding. It's very exciting, man. I think that, this is neat to be a part of this new movement in recovery right now. A movement that, as we talked about before, Bill hoped would be the case back in the 50s when he wrote that article. That
he was, as I've often said, he was writing about that and hoping that just about the time little Alan Berger was born.
That's right.
And it's like, I think that the storyline is, I like that storyline.
It's a good storyline.
All you had, just give me a few years. And of course, for us, it takes a little longer than other people. So,
a lot longer.
A few years, yeah.
But it's exciting, man. I just love seeing this, and
I do too.
I love seeing and people get excited. I love to see the energy around this stuff. So it's really, that part's been very fulfilling, man. And I really appreciate how we've shared this journey for this amount of time, and. And so it's.
Well, I love
great.
The collaboration of it. I mean, that's one of the things you and I talked about at the very beginning of our relationship.
Yes.
Whenever that was, a long time ago now. It's we talked about the fact that we'd both gotten to a place in our career where we felt good about what we were doing. We liked what we were doing, but we were kind of professionally lonely. And it wasn't in this, and the other thing is just about fun. It's like one of the things we talked about, early on was let's do more work together because it's more fun when I do it with you. Of course, we were just getting ready to take this stuff on the road, you and me, when the COVID thing hit, because we were working up our flyers, and I even worked up that one flyer called "Shit." You said, "What do you want to do a workshop on?" I said, "I don't know. I just want us to go into a treatment center, sit down with the staff, and talk about shit worth talking about." And you said, "Okay, work up the flyer." So I worked up a flyer called "Shit Worth Talking About." It's like, and you said, "Okay, let's do that." I think we cleaned it up a little bit after a while, but it was. But that's what we wanted to do. And that's what this is. This is like, on Sundays when we come in to record this stuff, it's like it's the three of us sitting down and exploring it. It's certainly, as we go through your book, we're talking about things that you have already given lots of thought to. We have worked on. We have a lot to present, but it's all. This is to me that we're always at the growing edge. It's like we're discovering things. It's not unusual, and I would think it's probably, if we listened back, it's probably unusual that somewhere along the line in any of our conversation, at least one of us, doesn't have a sort of a eureka moment of like, oh, wait a minute, I've never thought of this. Yeah. And it's usually because of a connection that one of the three of us says something, and we go, bingo, that gives me a whole different angle on that. And I think and of course, I also hope we're modeling thinking like that for people in recovery. Think outside the box, find it for yourself, figure it out, use what we have, but also, and that's also, I'll just add, that's one of the reasons we love hearing from listeners too, because you provide, your questions and comments provide a lot of good information for us.
Well, I think that what you and I discover with that is what I'd encourage people to do that are in the program, that if you stay gently pressed up against this, let's say, gently pressed up against emotional sobriety, these issues, that you're going to find if you continue to do that you are going to make these discoveries. They're going to come to you, man. Things are going to be revealed. You will find surprises, man. You will get to open some of these little mystery packages, and inside you'll find a little gem that'll be so valuable to your journey and to your recovery. I was going to bring up something. Let's check in with Patrick, because I wanted to talk to you about something that came up in one of the workshop I did yesterday with Herb that you and I have talked about before, but I wanted to put it in this context and at least for us to talk about a while, because I think so many people come in with this orientation, and I'd like us to elaborate on it for a moment. But Patrick, let's see where you're at, man. How are you doing?
Oh, I've been very well. And I've just been thinking, as you talked about the workshop, how wonderful it'd be to have Herb on the show at some point. Mr. Kagan.
I've got an inside track to that man, so I'm sure I can make that happen.
You know him. That's right.
I know him. I do know him. So we will definitely make that happen. Maybe we'll make it happen next week.
I love it. This
whole show is a process of it fits into my recovery, I think, pretty nicely, or dovetails with it. I'm out of my mind for half the week, just from trying to cope with I'm 2 weeks smoke free, no cigarettes. So that's
oh my God, what way to go, buddy.
Yeah, I want to keep this thing going because there's just
he wants to make sure he stays alive during the show. However long the podcast lasts.
Well, I mean, it would be ultimately shameful if as old as we are, if he died first. It's like, whatever comes next in the next life, he would never live it down. So, but listen, I have worked with people with addiction for forever, and it's like there is no more difficult, no more seductive addiction than nicotine. It's right. And I'm gratefully saying I've never actually this is one problem I've never had. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. It's I grew up with people who smoke, and I decided against it from the beginning. But I have worked with so many people, and I just have such respect for. 2 weeks is a long time, and anything we can do to support too, just let us know. Put us on the call list if you're jonesing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I mean, all this to say that my collaboration with you guys, and the meetings, and interacting with our audience, it's all a form of support and me trying to. I
was going to say to you, Patrick, could you have ever imagined that your recovery would involve you being the producer of this show?
No, I just, I was hoping I wouldn't die. I was hoping I wouldn't die in the beginning. Yeah. And
here you are helping a lot of people learn about emotional sobriety and helping us carry this message, which, I'm forever grateful for.
Thank you. I'm just, I need to keep growing to fill the container. That's kind of this image I get in my mind of a container that's growing as I get further and further into my recovery. And, I need to work to adjust.
And, look, the one of the great values that you bring to the show beyond all the other stuff you do on the technical side of this is that you, because of where you're at in your recovery, you bring that early perspective. Hey, what is this? What do I do with this? Stuff,
big curiosity. I love that
curiosity, man. And I think that, so many people have commented to me. I don't know if I said this to you before, but how great it is to have Patrick ask these questions and come in with his innocence about what's going on with this, or how do I figure this out, or what's happening with this. And so keep doing that. There's, I love when Tom invited you to be a part of this in a more active way, and it's really made the show better.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, our original thinking with that was we just got to get some other perspective than other two old men, two old white, a podcast of two old white men. It's like, okay, well, that's what everybody needs.
Grumpy old sobers.
Oh my God!
That might be our next podcast.
We might need to do that one.
Two grumpy old men.
Oh, that would be fun.
Talking about shit that matters.
or two grumpy old men talking about shit that they think matters.
Stuff that they think they might remember matter. They have a reasonable suspicion to think this might be relevant for someone somewhere.
I love it. A short clip from that one is I don't think that actually happened. Oh, okay. Well, then never mind.
Oh God. Well, let me tell you about this issue that came up, and then let's kick it around a bit, because I think it's so somebody in the workshop at the end of it asked this question. He said, look, I have been in, and I quote unquote say this, I've been in a toxic relationship and I've just gotten out of it. I lost my long-term recovery because of it, but I can't let go of it. And I can't let go of this person. I still am in contact with this person. There's a part of me that wants to go back into the relationship, and I don't know what to do. I'm caught. I'm in conflict, right? Between these two different parts of her.
That's how we hear it. Yeah.
One of the things that I said to her, which you and I talked about a lot at one point when we were doing some professional training for counselors and therapists, is this idea of labeling the patient as not wanting to get well.
Yeah.
And I was
even mine. Yeah.
And I was talking to her about, I started out my answer to her, and this is where I want to kick this around with you. And, I'm going to encourage her to listen to this show, because she wrote me today and says, God, can you please elaborate on this thing? And I thought it'd be nice to do that here and invite her to come in to listen to this down the road. See, one of the things I said to her is, one of the things that I've seen in treatment programs is this, what I think is a bad habit of blaming the patient for being a patient.
Yep.
Which is a weird kind of a concept that people are going into treatment to get well. And then the program gets together with them and says, well, you're behaving in a way that shows us you don't want to get well. Well, that's their interpretation of it. You and I talk about, Tom, that no, they're just behaving in the way that's showing you what their problem is. And the issue becomes one of is, can you help them or not labeling them as resistant to treatment, not wanting to get well, and then throwing them out of program.
Well, yeah. First of all, resistance is resistance in many forms, both conscious and unconscious, is characterizes, the kind of work the clients that we see, and that's not just substance addicts. That's the normal thing. It's one of my little nutshells says something like to blame a client for, or even label a client as a resistant client, is a little bit like the oncologist saying that I'll be happy to treat you, but you have cancer. It's like that. One of the things I have said to people, other therapists, is that's what we treat. Yeah. It's like you're actually pointing to the very thing that our job is to treat, and saying the problem is that you have this. Whether we're talking about, no matter what this content of their life is at that point, we are teaching people how to empower themselves to stand up to their own inner resistance. Or what Robert Keegan, the psychologist Robert Keegan, has a great term for it. He calls it the immunity to change. You know, and read some of his stuff, and it's like you go like, oh my God, check it off, because we all have this is a human condition. We have a deep immunity to change. It's like, that's what you and I welcome. And like you say, and sometimes I have to anyway, stop and remind myself that I need to educate the client along the way, because when somebody's talking to me, like what you're describing with this person after the workshop, is I'm watching the conversation go on between the two parts of that person.
Yes,
it's like, I'm not, because you automatically just say that, you say, okay, I hear that part and that part. It doesn't seem so much contradictory as it just seems, it just seems like a good, where I'm getting a good picture of the problem definition of the internal struggle.
And exactly. And, and then I said, what my comment was to her, she went on about describing all of the things that made him toxic. And I said to her, look, I think that maybe part of the problem for you in terms of dealing with this situation is that you're very clear on what his part of the problem is.
Yeah.
You've just articulated it to me. You've detailed it. You've listed 3 different issues. I said, but what you seem to know so little about is what you're struggling with in terms of dealing with that. Mm-hmm. And what is going on for you that you can't hold on to yourself better and stuff like that. And I says, it's very common if I'm struggling with something, that if I haven't been doing this work, let's say the emotional sobriety shuffle, if I'm not doing the emotional sobriety shuffle, then it's easy to get into the blame game. Right. And to play that game with someone and says, my God, if you just were different, I could be okay. If you stop doing this, if you stop doing that, if you could just be less toxic, then we'd have a much better relationship. If only you could change, then we'd be fine. We
tend to make complicated what is simple and vice versa. We get that all backwards. And because one of the things we're doing, I don't know this person you're talking about, but I'm going to generalize and say one of the things we do is when we just focus on the obvious toxicity. I mean, my guess is if somebody's describing that, I mean, I've talked, they may be wrong, but I'm going to assume that, okay, you're describing it. It's like, is the other thing that's not being said is that person's problem definition is, what's wrong with me? Am I just stupid? Why do I keep going back to that? Of course, and that's the question we ask rhetorically, which is not really a question, which just means I'm an idiot. Yeah. But what we want to do is take that rhetorical question and turning into the lead investigation into this. It was like, yes, let's discuss that.
Yeah, what examining
keeps you going back.
But get clear for people so they get this, because you're right on with this. Examining what you can do to better cope is not the same as blaming yourself as being an idiot for even wanting to be in a relationship.
We're looking to solve problems. And we're in the first part, one of my little lines is the first part of any problem that we must solve is that which is between me and me. I've got to find out what this is. And it's not going to be as simple as what's wrong with, again, we got to realize these should monsters and these little, or your, what would you call it? Your hate monster, your little you're a dinosaur. Yes. I love it. It's like, these guys come in with these oversimplified things it's just because it's because you're sick, because you're an idiot, because, Well, it's like, okay, if you can have a decent conversation, you're not really going to converse with the monster, but what you can say is like, good point. Let's investigate exactly what this sickness is about, or let's, for me, it's like, just take some of the power out of the insults and say, okay, I need to really understand my idiocy better so that I can so I can be less of an idiot. I am currently less of an idiot than I used to be.
Yeah. So it's almost like, can you suspend judgment of yourself or others?
Yes.
And just look at it more phenomenologically. Mm-hmm. What is happening and what are you doing?
Yep.
And what are other possibilities? See, I think when we move into that space, because I know you do that with people, and I do, even when we bring people into a dialogue with the different parts of themselves, one of the great values of it is somebody gets to be objective with themselves for a minute, and they see their own process. And it's like that third eye that we talk about that develops, right? That third eye sees what they're doing and they go, wow, look at what just happened there. And that's the discovery then, or what leads to the discovery of new possibilities. Right. So look, the first thing that we say, if you're in a situation and you're stuck, blaming yourself or the other person will not unstick you. It won't get you out of the impasse. It's a part of the impasse. See, that's I didn't say it that clearly, but that's what we're saying, aren't we?
Yeah. Blame's I always say blame's the anchor. Blame is whether you drop it in on yourself or somebody else. Blame is going to keep you from. It's going to if you're not in deep enough water for it to hit the ground, it's going to slow you down. And if you're in shallow enough water, it's going to stop you from going forward. It's and this is where I've been accused of just doing psychobabble and semantics here, but I think it's much more than that. And that is we need semantics sometimes to help us clarify. And this is the difference between blame and responsibility. Blame slows us down. Blame stops us. Responsibility helps us move forward. And what we got to say is what responsibility do I have for this? How have I, and again, the way we actually keep ourselves from, and this is one of the most important things I think that we both teach, is one of the ironically, one of the main ways we keep ourselves from moving forward and solving our problems is by buying into these insults about what idiots, what sick people we are. All this. So that's a little bit like what you're saying that's one of the reasons we get upset with clinicians who basically want to look at the client and say it's a resistant client. It's like, no, it's the Richard Bandler line. There's no such thing as resistant clients. There are only inflexible therapists. I love that.
It's a great line. Mm-hmm. And look, so to elaborate on that, when you say, and so everybody hear that, because that's such a nice, objective way to measure. Are you blaming yourself or are you empowering yourself with taking responsibility? The difference is the movement. If you're stuck, you're blamed. It's the anchor Tom just talked about, right? There's no movement forward. As soon as you start to take responsibility, now there's some movement forward, right? Now there's some action that you're taking to help to move you towards what's next.
All right, here's the insight for the day for me. It's a simple thing. Probably maybe everybody's had it, but I just realized is blame is the question, what did I do? And responsibility is the question, what can I do?
There's the difference right there. What can I do? What can I do? How do I resolve? So let's stay with that for a minute. So when you said this, so I had one of those little epiphanies right now. When we're taking responsibility, oftentimes what people said that, like Gestalt therapist, Fritz Perls was one, he says responsibility is the ability to respond. A responsibility, your ability to respond. That's what Tom was just talking about. If I have an ability to respond, now I'm in action. I'm dealing with the situation. I'm not caught between these two parts of me that are now, in conflict. One says do this, one says do that, and I don't know how to resolve that internal conflict. There's a part of me that agrees with both of them. What do you do? Right. Well,
and what you're doing is you're introducing the thing that I always find fun. I think it's fun because it's like people who come in thinking that having the multiple parts of their personality is part of their problem, and go like, no, actually, we're not going to, you and I've said this too. It's like, we're not going to help. We can't subtract anything. We can't take anything out, but what we can do is we can add some. And it's like, which of course feels very counterintuitive to some people, but what you just described is a place for what I think I think it's the self-forgiveness handbook. I describe it as the decision maker. It's like the part, you need that third part that basically can listen to both parts, and see the not just right or wrong, but see the valid points from both parts. But the idea is, this is basically the part of us that we want to be in charge, of ourselves. It's like all, I always say, rather than feel like I am a multiple personality, instead I'm the guy at the hub of the wheel who listens to all of this, takes it in, and makes decisions. Tough decisions, but it's like, yeah. And it very often can start with, I agree with both. Well, yeah. Okay. Let's start there and let's investigate.
Right on. And I've seen in that dialogue too, oftentimes when I get people like, I don't know what this person would say if they dialogue these two parts of themselves, part that wants to be in the relationship, part that doesn't. But I will guarantee that the dialogue will begin, not guarantee, I can't guarantee anything. My hunch is that the dialogue will begin with one part making a statement and declaring its position. Then when I ask them to change, they go over to the other part, and that part makes their declaration.
Yep.
And there's no interaction between the two. I think we should do this. This part says, well, I think we should do this. Then the other part, you say, go back. This part just goes back to saying what it never addresses what the other part said. So these parts are so fragmented from one another that there is no ability for an integration, for emerging, to try to find some ground of cooperation, because they're not talking to each other.
Right. Well, and if we're sitting there watching that dialogue, one of the things that you and I can agree on too is the idea that how often those dialogues. I like the fact that you went from guarantee to wild guess a minute ago. It's like that's right. Because I promise you, absolutely. Well, I don't know. There's a slight chance that this could happen. Anyway, it's like we just take ourselves.
Humility took over for 1 minute. I had a flash of humility. I'm not.
We want to be credible. We want to be credible, and we realize, oh shit, Patrick's recording this. It's like if we were just on our own, we might be able to pull it off. The idea is how these dialogues. I love the fact that they go a different way more times than not than I would predict at the beginning of the dialogue. Right. Which means it's not me running the show. It's them doing that. One of those differences is that sometimes you can find two differing parts that basically, if and this is where I always want to remind people, this is just metaphor. So we can change it any way we want to. It's like, if it looks like there's a ability to actually collaborate, and work on problem solving and ultimately integrate, then that's good. But if not, if they're just positions, like you said, that's when that third part, that decision maker, comes in and say, like they don't need to be talking to each other. They need to be talking to you. I'll have them write two different position papers. And the instruction is simply like exactly what you started off, which is what made me remember this is you what you do is you do not let if it's a pro and a con, say for instance, then you let that part purely write that down, and you write it. And I even you write it as if the decision has already been made, and as you're justifying the decision. I have decided to move to so and so and so and so and so and so, or go in this relationship, and this is the reason, and this is why it's going to be. Actually invite them to almost be arrogant with it, to be able to just own it, and then write the different position thing. It's what I've discovered is you don't even really have to ask about that third part at that place, because once they've written those positions, when they come back into a session, they're in a different spot. They'll be almost always. I'm trying to think if I've had an experience where somebody did not have this, but there was almost always a clear understanding of either what the decision needed to be, or more specifically, what it is they were going to have to work through in order to get to that decision.
I'm just reflecting on the depth of my delusion with therapists in the past. I would show up loaded to sessions, and I would relapse, and I would just kind of be in this carousel of bad decision making. But I think like what you guys are talking about, in that showing the patient the gears of the clock, and just kind of making us more and more aware of the kind of what leads us to these expressive moments
Mm-hmm.
is the key to giving yourself the space to make a different decision, right? It's more about like, informing us as we sit there,
Well, yeah, I love Gears of the Clock. That's such a cool thing. It's because because that's exactly what it feels like to me. And this is one of the things that is, and it's one of the things that makes, when I'm very grateful that I love what I do so much. And Alan and I have that in common, that we're so fascinated with what we do after all these years. But the idea is I love showing that to clients. If somebody's been in therapy with other people, sometimes that are a little bit more just traditional and directive or whatever, it's like it takes me a little bit to educate them and let them know that I actually am inviting their participation very actively. It's like, including and maybe beginning with, it's like, if I'm missing the point, if it feels like you're missing the point, you say that to me. And what I promise them is I'll say, look, if I think you're wrong, if I think there's something else, if I see something that you don't see, I'll keep pushing. I promise I won't. I'm not, but ultimately, so many times people will say, no, that's not the way that is at all. And I'm off on some little fantasy thing that I've had that I thought was accurate, but it's not. And they're just saying that instead of going home thinking my therapist doesn't get me. It's saves us so much time, because once you see the gears of the clock, you can work on it too.
And this ties into the other thing that we've talked about often too, is that trouble doesn't mean something's wrong.
Right.
Doesn't mean something's not wrong either. I want to be clear about that. We're not being black and white about this thing. But what the trouble is that I don't know how to deal with this situation in a way where I can feel good about myself. And see, that's like when you said the other interpretation of resistance, that was a Bandler that said it.
Richard Bandler.
That idea that there's just inflexible therapists. Walt Kempler was so great, my mentor, at saying that, look, when we encounter a client that we don't know how to help, if we approach them with humility, then we create an opportunity for ourselves to grow. Mm-hmm. And what a better message would be to a client to say, look, we know that you're showing us what's wrong and that you need some help to deal with this. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we don't know the best way.
Yeah.
We just start to think of polarizing and labeling you and saying that you're the problem, so that we don't feel bad about ourselves, because we really want to help you. So if we blame you, then we kind of wash our hands of this thing. But we don't want to do that, because that's going to just add to already experiences that have labeled you as the problem. You probably label yourself as that all the time. So we don't want to do that. But we don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So we need to talk to you about that. We don't know what the next step is. But same thing if we encounter that in our relationships. It's not that we can deal with everything. There's a situation, if somebody was beating me up physically, I don't want to try to figure that out. I need to get out of there, because I need to feel safe. And so that's my job to do that. If I can't, feel safe in that situation, then I need to walk away. Now, that doesn't mean that there might be times when, instead of saying to someone, I'm feeling scared right now, can you protect me? See, a lot of times we don't ask for what we want in those situations. Mm-hmm. I had a guy the other day that he's just totally lost in terms of dealing with his wife, and he's missing her. And I can feel the guy's anguish and pain and deep, deep longing for connection with her. And yet when he talks to her about it, he's always telling her what she's doing wrong and how this is a problem with her father. I mean, he complains. Mm-hmm. He complains and blames. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, man, that's not getting her closer to him. I mean,
That's right.
she's not saying, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're complaining and telling me what a problem I have. Like,
Right.
can we go home and cuddle now?"
Right.
I mean,
It's not unusual for somebody to describe something that's pretty ridiculously horrific, and I may say something like, "Okay, well, that's perfect," and they'll look out and I'll notice that they're looking at me like, "Are you paying attention?" I'm going like, no. I mean, that's a perfect way to describe it so that we can get a handle on this and see what this is. But that you bring up something that's very, very important too, is if you're in a relationship that's where you're being abused, going back to a toxic relationship is that dynamic. It's going back to something that feels like you're getting beat up, you're getting mistreated in some way, and you keep going back to it. Is like, that's of course, if you're telling me that and you're going back to this, I'm saying, okay, you may actually know you want to get out, but I'm going to say, what do you think keeps you there? And we know that's going to take us into a series of questions. It's going to help us hopefully get you to a place where you respect yourself enough rather than just beat yourself up to where you're going to be able to be empowered. But then all that around the block to say protection is what you said. And it's like, how often do we ask people, has there ever been somebody in your life who actually protected you, that there is a blank look on their face? Not everybody, but man, I say that in a group sometimes, and you can look at people and there is a blank look, because so many people have not, and I mean, maybe not literally, never, ever, that kind of stuff, but never really had that strong sense of being protected, never having that person that was the benevolent power greater than them, which is what a parent needs to be, that is there to protect them. Because if you have that, then you have a model for becoming that for yourself. But I learned that I was often asking people to become that, but I had failed to see that they never had experienced it. They didn't even know what it was like. Right. So you and I in our points of intervention workshop have done a couple of good structures where we gave somebody protection and just watched somebody. I remember one time you were the protection. I remember, because you were right there in front of me and the guy was on the other side. And it's like, and his empowerment came back almost immediately once he was protected.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I wanted to read a quote from Byron Katie, because her work is very interesting.
I love her.
She's got a book out there called "I Need Your Love. Is That True?" And it's outstanding. And she does a lot of work around what she calls the turnaround. In my opinion, the way I look at her work through my lenses with emotional sobriety is that she's really helping people find freedom in their life, find this emotional sobriety. So this is what she says about being in a relationship and struggling with something. Because, we do believe that trouble is an opportunity, right? That there's an opportunity in trouble always to grow yourself and to learn something. This is how she says it. She says, so if your partner is angry, good. If there are things about him that you consider flaws, good. Because these flaws are your own. You're projecting them. And it's an interesting way she says that, and we can unpack that in a little bit. She goes, and you can write them down, inquire, which means own them, and set yourself free. She goes, people go to India to find a guru, but you don't have to. You're living with one. She goes, your partner will give you everything you need for your own freedom.
Yeah, beautiful.
Everything you need for your own freedom. Now, that's what can happen. How you get there is what we've been talking about. Getting to the point to take that experience and meet it in such a way as to grow you, to develop you in this line, right? To help set yourself free is really the goal of any work you're doing on yourself, whether it's with Byron Katie, whether it's the 12 steps, whether it's psychotherapy, it doesn't matter. You're looking to set yourself free from the habitual ways that you're dealing with situations, from the patterns that have been formed in your life, and discovering new possibilities.
Right. And so, it's specifically, it's freedom to choose.
It's freedom to choose. That's where the empowerment comes from, right? That's where the empowerment comes from. How to choose and how to be open to learning from your choice. and then making
the next one
adjustments.
Take the connotation of problem away, as like you say, as this is a bad thing. It's like, no, we're solving problems every moment of every day. Some of them are little and some of them are bigger. And it's like, but basically getting from point A to point B, getting to, and one of the things I love to say is each problem solved becomes the next problem.
When I blame myself or others, I'm also expressing my lack of faith in myself. Because what I'm saying when I see that you're the problem, or this part of me is the problem, I'm saying that I don't have faith in myself to deal with this thing. That this thing that I'm seeing, the way I'm talking about it, if that changes, I'll be okay. Which means I don't believe that I have the capacity to get to okay myself. That
I love that. I need you to change because and then what's the unspoken part, but sometimes spoken, because I can't.
Yeah, because I can't. I don't have that. I don't have the experience with myself. Now, you and I know that those ideas are incredibly self-limiting, and if you challenge them, I've yet to find someone that's not able to make some kind of changes in some way.
Right.
But even if the change is just becoming aware of that idea that they can't change, that's a change. I mean, that becomes a change in itself. So, please, if you're listening to this, never give up on yourself. Never give up on yourself. There's always some hope. And this kind of like we're saying today, the theme of this show is going to be, we're going to elaborate and we'll do it next time about no one is coming. But really what the theme of today's show is, never give up on yourself. That miracle can happen. It may not happen as quickly as you want it to. Sometimes it's slow briety. It doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes a while for these things, but I'll tell you, if you can stay the course, that eventually some things are going to get put together in your consciousness. They're going to come together and you're going to see possibilities you couldn't see before.
Well, it's scary as hell to realize that you're the one that's going to, it's like you feel tremendously inadequate. I always tell people, like, when you become a parent of an inner child, and I'm not a parent, but I've talked to many of you who are, and I'm pretty sure that the common experience of being a parent is to feel inadequate, is to feel scared shitless. And it's like, and what I tell people is that's what we feel when we discover that we're the ones that are responsible for ourselves. And so recently, what I've been saying with your statement, no one's coming. I told somebody the other day, no one's coming because you're already here.
I like that.
It's like, and of course they're going, oh my God, I know that feeling, like I'm the one. I'm the person who's going to, oh, Jesus, it's like, so then you face that fear. And anybody listening, like what Alan's saying, if you walk up to the edge of this stuff and it looks scary as hell, then welcome, come on in. This is exactly how it starts. It is a very scary, scary thing. But all those interpretations in your head that tell you that you can't do it, they're lying to you.
That's right.
I love the metaphor of dropping anchors. Blame is an anchor being dropped. And, I think I probably love blaming, especially when it comes to politics. I spend most of my week just sitting and, stewing, blaming. But I mean, for practical purposes, it's what I do with whatever those feelings are. That's what really matters, I guess. Or that's kind of like, the definitional thing.
Well, but see, I think we won't necessarily go into the politics, but I think politics is a good example of just in the process of it, because especially the way things are right now this is also true in our personal relationships, is when we feel completely unable to change the other person, when we feel helpless in face of that is the biggest challenge for us. Because still, we need to turn back and say we don't need to get louder about how ridiculous they are. We need to get more productive about in this situation, facing what seems to be a brick wall to me, what am I going to do? how am I going to change myself so that I might be able to move forward, without this person or these people changing. It's like,
right.
It's scary.
And I wanted to just bring back around. There is a great Nathaniel Branden quote you had in your book about one of the things that obstruct maturity are choices that are meant to be adaptive, but instead are self-destructive. And is that what you would say your work with patients is just helping them to make those choices that are actually adaptive, not self-destructive, or helping them to,
Right. Yeah. We can almost say upgrade the operating system.
Yes.
Right. The ones that they installed were the old first version and had a lot of programming flaws in it. And not that they didn't work like we do when we get different upgrades on, current Microsoft. It's not that they're not operating okay. They're doing a fine job, but there's flaws in them and they don't allow the computer to function as optimally as it can. Same thing with us. I think that analogy works well. I do want to make a correction from our last programming where we talked about the good enough mother, and I attributed that to Bettelheim. And Bettelheim did write a book on that, but he was not the person that originated the concept. It was D.W. Winnicott, and one of our listeners wrote me a nice, very, great message and says, listen, it was a great show, but it seems like you weren't aware that idea was originated by a pediatrician who was trained as a psychoanalyst, and his name was Dr. D.W. Winnicott. And he coined the term the good enough mother, and Bettelheim picked it up because it had it resonated so well with the way that Bettelheim was looking at things.
Credit where credit is due. I love it.
Credit where credit is due.
I love that. I love that, whatever helps to sharpen or focus what it is we're discussing.
We appreciate our listeners. If we say something that, especially, that you've got some information on and you can help educate us, look, we're here doing the best we can, and that we don't claim to know everything. And sometimes we'll have certain ideas that need to be corrected. So please share your things. And if, you get upset and pissed off about something we talk about that with us too.
That's right. Let Alan know
about it. Send that to Tom. No, let me know. Let Tom know.
Yeah.
Let Pat, blame it on Patrick. He's the producer. He's the one that's his fault.
He let us say it.
but Steve, we want you to do that because look, it's not that we won't push back maybe and say, wow, what does that bring up for you? Because that happened with me with somebody too, in terms of one of the shows that I had, in terms of somebody was pushing back and saying, but what it is some of the stuff we'll talk about are going to bring up issues for you.
I have some clients, a couple in particular, that listen to our podcast, and I appreciate very much, and brings up lots of things. It's they're one of the things they're used to me. We are in a business that is, most of the time we're talking about truth. We're talking about subjective truth. Yeah. So the idea is, it's like I can believe something with all my heart and mind, and it may not be true for you at all.
All right, Patrick. So can we continue this discussion next week?
Let's get back into the nitty gritty of your book next week. And until then,
peace out.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.